They say the first impression sticks with people forever. I wish that wasn't true. Because if it is, then I'll forever be the guy with the funny accent to some of the people at Bright Tech Solutions. It was a crisp Monday morning when I walked into the downtown Chicago office building, clutching my messenger bag like a lifeline. The lobby gleamed with polished marble and the faint aroma of fresh espresso wafted through the air. I had just landed a junior developer role at one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the Midwest. For a kid from El Paso, this was huge. I was nervous, not about the job itself, but about how I'd fit in. I'd worked hard to be here. 4 years at a state university, 2 years in grad school, internships, freelance gigs, certifications. All of it had finally paid off. The HR coordinator, a woman named Melissa, gave me a warm welcome and a tour. As we made our way past rows of sleek desks and glass-walled meeting rooms, I could feel curious eyes on me. Most people offered friendly nods. A few waved. It was all going well. Until I met Chad. He was leaning back in his ergonomic chair, tossing a stress ball between his hands like he owned the place. When Melissa introduced me, he didn't stand up. Just gave me a smirk and said, "What's up, Danny boy?" I corrected him, politely. "It's Daniel, actually." "Sure thing, Danny. You from around here?" "El Paso," I replied. "Oof," he winced playfully, turning to the guy next to him. "That's like, right next to the border, right?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, it is." Chad grinned wider. "So, do we get Taco Tuesdays now? Or maybe some real spicy team lunches?" The guy beside him chuckled. Melissa looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I laughed lightly, unsure how else to respond. I didn't want to rock the boat on day one. It was a joke, I told myself. Maybe a tasteless one, but still, just a joke. I moved on with the rest of the orientation. Signed a few papers, got my badge, set up my workstation. The dev team lead, Marcus, seemed cool and grounded. He welcomed me properly and introduced me to the tools I'd be using. For the most part, I felt optimistic. But Chad's voice lingered in my mind. "Danny boy. Taco Tuesdays." The way he smirked like I was a walking punchline. Maybe it shouldn't have bothered me so much. But it did. That night, I called my mom. She asked how the first day went. "It was good," I lied. "Everyone seems nice." I didn't tell her about Chad or the joke. I didn't want to worry her. She and my dad had sacrificed too much to get me here, working double shifts, saving every penny, pushing me to pursue the opportunities they never had. They were proud of me. And I didn't want them to know that on the very first day of my new life, someone made me feel small. But it was only the beginning. By the second week at Bright Tech, I had already fallen into a rhythm with my work. Debugging legacy code, assisting on sprint tasks, and quietly proving myself where it counted. I wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but I knew my stuff. Marcus, my team lead, had started passing more tasks my way, even tossing me a small but critical API migration project. I could see the confidence building in him, and in myself. But outside of our team meetings, Chad's voice still echoed louder than anyone else's. He wasn't just in sales, he was the guy in sales. Charismatic, loud, always the first to crack a joke in meetings, the first to dominate conversations at the coffee machine. He had a reputation for being a fun guy, the one who brought tequila to the Christmas party last year and convinced a VP to do karaoke. But Chad's brand of fun? It had a mean edge. I remember one Tuesday morning, I walked into the open plan workspace, coffee in hand, earbuds still in. I was reviewing a PR request in my mind when I heard him shout across the room. "Hey, it's Danny boy. What's on the menu today? Spicy code with a side of salsa?" A few heads turned. Some people snickered. I laughed too, awkwardly, pretending it didn't bother me. But something inside me coiled. He'd been doing it every other day. Mocking the way I pronounced certain words, mimicking me under his breath, or whispering fake Spanish to his buddies whenever I walked by. He never said anything explicitly racist. But it was always something. A look. A smirk. A mocking, "ay caramba," when I nailed a feature deployment. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he didn't realize how much it stung. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. The worst part was the silence. No one stopped him. Not even once. Not Jenna, who sat 2 desks away and gave me sympathetic glances afterward. Not Josh, who used to pair program with me and once told me, "You're way smarter than people give you credit for." Even Marcus, kind, fair Marcus, never stepped in. Maybe he thought it wasn't his place. Maybe he didn't notice. Or maybe he just didn't want to deal with Chad. One Friday, at the end of our stand-up, Marcus congratulated me on finishing the API transition 2 days ahead of schedule. Everyone clapped lightly. I gave a small smile and nodded. Chad, leaning on the edge of his desk with arms folded, chimed in loud enough for everyone to hear. "Nice job, man. You're really earning that green card." My stomach dropped. There was a pause in the room. Jenna looked down. Someone coughed. I laughed. A short, breathless laugh. "I was born in Texas," I said, evenly. Chad raised his eyebrows. "Just messing with you, bro." Marcus said nothing. The meeting ended. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. My reflection looked tired. Defeated. A shadow of the man who had walked into that company full of dreams just 2 weeks earlier. I wasn't ashamed of where I came from. I wasn't ashamed of my accent. I was angry. That I had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously, and still be reduced to a punchline by a man who probably couldn't write a line of code if his life depended on it. But I still told myself, just keep your head down. Do good work. It'll pay off. I didn't know then that things were only going to get worse. By the start of my 2nd month at Bright Tech, I was exhausted, not from the workload, but from the performance. Not in code, but in survival. Every day I walked into the office, I felt like I was slipping on armor. A carefully rehearsed smile, a polite nod, a tight grip on my coffee cup. I got good at it, at laughing when I didn't want to, pretending I didn't hear, brushing off jokes like they didn't land like knives. But all that pretending, it wears you down. I kept my head down and focused on the work. I was proud of what I was doing. I just completed the load balancing feature for one of our main services, and Marcus even hinted at putting me up for a bonus. It should have been a high point. Instead, it became the day I broke. We were scheduled for the quarterly all-hands meeting, a big deal at Bright Tech. Everyone was expected to give a short presentation on their recent contributions. Not a major presentation, but enough to be nerve-wracking if you weren't used to public speaking. Especially if your voice had already been turned into a punchline. I spent the night before rehearsing. Tweaked my slides until 2 a.m. Practiced every word. Triple-checked my pronunciation on tricky terms. I even asked a friend to listen to me rehearse over Zoom. I didn't want to give Chad, or anyone, anything to mock. The next morning, I dressed my best. Navy blazer. Clean white shirt. Pressed slacks. I wanted to walk in with confidence. When it was finally my turn to present, I took a deep breath, stood up in front of nearly 60 people, and started. The first few slides went fine. I was explaining the new caching strategy I'd helped design, walking through a data flow diagram. Then came the word, hierarchical. I knew it. I'd said it a dozen times in rehearsal. But as soon as it came up, I saw Chad shift in his seat. Smirking. I said it, hierarchical, and before I could even finish the next sentence, he cut in loudly from the back row. Wait, what was that? Can you say it again? I don't think we all got it. A few scattered laughs. Some surprised, some uncomfortable. My hand froze on the clicker. I tried to ignore it and keep going. But he didn't stop. Come on, man. Just one more time, for the culture. This time the laugh was louder. A couple people in the back actually clapped. My vision blurred for a second. I stared at the screen, then back at the crowd. My throat tightened. But I forced my voice to stay level. I'm here to present engineering progress, not put on a show, I said. Calm. Direct. Chad held up his hands mockingly. Hey, just having fun. But the room was different now. Silent. Uncomfortable. I pushed through the rest of my slides like a robot. No one asked questions when I finished. I sat down quietly, hands shaking. Marcus didn't say a word. After the meeting, I went straight to the restroom and locked myself in a stall. I didn't cry. I just sat there. Breathing. Staring at the floor. I kept thinking, why didn't anyone stop him? Why do I have to be the one to absorb it, again and again, just to keep my job? Then, a knock. Soft. It was Jenna. Daniel? You okay? I opened the door slowly. She didn't say anything, just gave me a look. One that said, I saw. I know. It wasn't right. But no one else came. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted an email to HR. Then deleted it. Then wrote it again. Subject line, hostile work environment complaint. I listed everything. Dates. Comments. Specific phrases. Witnesses. I didn't know what would come of it. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. The morning after I sent the email to HR, I walked into the office with a new kind of weight in my chest, heavier, somehow, than all the weeks of enduring Chad's mockery. It wasn't fear exactly. It was a quiet, coiled tension. Like I had just stepped onto a frozen lake and didn't know which step would crack the surface. HR didn't reply right away. No call. No confirmation. No, we take this seriously. Just, silence. At my desk, I noticed the shift almost immediately. Jenna gave me a small, knowing glance. Josh avoided eye contact entirely. Marcus popped by with his usual, how's it going, but it felt stiff, forced. The company was small enough that rumors traveled fast, and everyone knew something was up. Chad wasn't at his desk that day. Or the next. On Thursday afternoon, I got the meeting invite. HR follow-up, 2 p.m., conference room B. I sat across from Kimberly, the HR manager. She was professional, polite, and too calm for what this was. She read from a notepad and occasionally looked up to ask follow-up questions. Had Chad ever physically threatened me? No. Had I ever told him explicitly to stop? Yes. Had I documented these incidents as they happened? I had. I handed her a folder of printed examples. I had time-stamped Slack messages, email threads, and even quotes I'd written down in my notes app right after they happened. She nodded slowly. We've received supporting comments from 2 of your colleagues who noticed the behavior. We're taking this very seriously. Still, I left that meeting with no clear answer. No assurance. Just, we'll be in touch. That weekend, I felt raw. I went for a long walk through Millennium Park. Tried to distract myself with a book, then music, then cleaning my apartment. Nothing worked. I couldn't stop replaying it all, Chad's smirk, the laughter in that meeting room, the way people chuckled because they were too afraid to be the only ones not laughing. My accent. My culture. My parents' sacrifices. All of it reduced to a cheap punchline. I kept wondering, would this have happened if I didn't speak the way I do? Would they have stood up for me if I didn't look like this? It wasn't just about one man. It was about all the others who stayed silent while he chipped away at me. Monday morning, the news broke. Chad had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal review. The wording was sterile. Carefully crafted. But the undercurrent was clear. A few people messaged me privately. "Jenna, you were brave. I should have said something earlier. Josh, I'm sorry I laughed. I really am. Someone from marketing, whom I barely knew, thank you for standing up. My last job was like that, and I didn't have the courage to speak. It didn't fix anything. But it mattered." That week, Marcus stopped by and asked if I wanted to lead the upcoming sprint planning session. "You've earned it," he said. His eyes lingered a second too long, like he wanted to say more. But didn't. 2 weeks later, Chad was reassigned. Quietly. He wasn't fired. Just moved to a back-end sales support role with no client contact. The announcement didn't name names. Didn't mention why. But people noticed. The laughter stopped. The smirks faded. And for the first time, I walked into that office without armor. Then something unexpected happened. In our next team meeting, a new hire, May, a junior developer from San Francisco, asked a question during stand-up and stumbled over a word. It was a complicated technical term, and she said it with a slight Mandarin inflection. There was a pause in the room. The kind of pause I knew too well. But before anyone could say a thing, I spoke up. It's pronounced differently depending on where you're from. The point is, her solution works, and it's smart. May smiled. Grateful. I saw myself in her eyes. That day, I realized something. I wasn't just fixing things for myself. I was clearing a path for the ones who would come next. The months that followed brought a quiet but steady transformation, not just in the office, but in me. I stopped walking with my eyes down. I stopped second-guessing every word before it left my mouth. I still had an accent. That never changed. What changed was the shame I used to carry about it. Because I realized something, the problem had never been how I spoke. It was how others listened. And now, they were listening differently. One morning, I received an unexpected email from Marcus. Subject, Company Culture Panel. "Hey Daniel, I know it's short notice, but we're organizing an internal panel for our company's Diversity and Inclusion Week. Would you be willing to share your story? Only if you're comfortable, of course." I stared at it for a long time. My gut twisted with hesitation. My brain told me to be careful, don't stir the pot, don't reopen old wounds. But my heart said something else. "It's time." I replied, I'd be honored. The day of the panel, I stood in front of a packed room. People from every department filled the seats, developers, sales reps, HR, even some senior execs. A few faces I hadn't spoken to in months. My palms were sweaty. My heart thundered. But I didn't bring slides. I didn't use notes. I just spoke. I was born in El Paso, Texas, to 2 immigrant parents who worked twice as hard so I could have half a chance. English wasn't my first language. I learned it at age 6, mostly by watching cartoons and reading store signs. And like a lot of us, I carry that language with a certain flavor, one that reflects where I came from. A few people nodded. Some smiled. When I started here, I was excited. Nervous. Grateful. And then, someone turned my voice into a joke. I paused. You could hear the air still in the room. He didn't call me names. He didn't touch me. But he made me feel small, every time I spoke. And the worst part? He wasn't alone. People laughed. People let it happen. No one moved. I almost quit. But I didn't. I filed a complaint, not out of revenge, but because I refused to shrink into silence anymore. I spoke up for myself, and for every person who's ever felt like they didn't belong because of their voice, their name, their face, or where they came from. A hand shot up from the crowd. It was May. She asked, "Do you regret speaking up?" I looked her straight in the eyes. No. Because silence protects the person causing harm, not the one being hurt. The room broke into applause. After the panel, something shifted permanently. People approached me in the halls, not out of pity, but with respect. May told me I gave her courage to speak louder in meetings. Another colleague, a Nigerian engineer named Chinedu, thanked me for making him feel seen. Even Chad, weeks later, sent me a brief email. No excuses. Just, "I'm sorry for what I did. I get it now." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. A few months later, I was promoted to lead developer. At the celebration lunch, Marcus raised his glass. To Daniel, not just for his code, but for his courage. I smiled. Not just because of the title. But because I knew I'd earned every piece of it as my full self, not as someone who had to hide or perform. And from that day forward, every time I spoke in a meeting, every time someone heard my voice, I made sure they heard all of it. Slogan for the ending. They mocked my accent to drown me out. But I found a louder truth, and I made sure they listened. He tried to make my voice a joke. I turned it into a legacy. My accent isn't a flaw, it's my signature. And now, it signs the top of every page I lead.